1820. The Scottish Highlands. The village of Cairnmore had 23 souls. By dawn it would have none. Nathaniel Cross stood in the center of the burning square, his silhouette carved from shadow and firelight. The rain could not touch the flames. Nothing could. Around him, bodies lay scattered like broken dolls, their eyes frozen wide in the moment they understood that mercy was not coming. One man remained alive, the blacksmith, the one who had spoken the unforgivable word, betrayal. Nathaniel moved with terrible patience. His boots made no sound on the cobblestones. The rain hissed against the burning buildings, turning the air to steam. But his eyes cut through it all, eyes like winter storms, gray and merciless. "Please!" The blacksmith's voice was a wet gasp. Blood bubbled at his lips. "My children knew nothing." Nathaniel knelt beside the dying man. When he spoke, his voice was soft. That was what made it worse. "Your children were in the barn when I arrived. I gave them a choice, run or burn." He tilted his head. They chose poorly. The blacksmith's scream tore through the night, echoing off the mountains. Nathaniel stood, turned his back, and walked away from Cairnmore. Behind him, the village collapsed into itself, timber and stone and flesh feeding the same hungry fire. He did not look back. He never looked back. That was who Nathaniel Cross had been, the reaper of the highlands, the king who walked in blood. But time collects debts, even from those who believe they will live forever. Present day, Blackwood Manor, Oregon coast. The house perched on the cliffs like a carrion bird waiting for death. Built from black basalt and gray stone, its towers stabbed upward into the perpetual fog rolling in from the Pacific. The locals called it Blackwood Manor because darkness lived there, because even in daylight, shadows clung to its walls like living things. Inside, in the eastern tower, Nathaniel Cross was dying. The room was a cathedral of suffering, 20-foot ceilings, stained glass windows depicting the Book of Revelation, a fireplace large enough to burn a man whole, and in the center, beside that fireplace, stood a creature that had once been the most feared predator on the continent. Now he could barely stand. Nathaniel gripped the mantelpiece with both hands, knuckles white against dark wood. His breathing came in short gasps that had nothing to do with need for air and everything to do with pain. The withering, a curse that struck vampires who had lived too long without purpose, without love, without anything that made immortality worth the weight of centuries. It started small, a migraine that would not fade, a weariness sleep could not cure. Then came decay. The body, which had regenerated from bullets and blades and burning, began to fail from the inside out. Nathaniel's skin had lost its alabaster sheen, holding now the gray pallor of a 3-day corpse. His eyes, once Arctic ice, had dulled to dirty dishwater. And the pain was a living thing, a beast with diamond teeth gnawing at his skull every waking moment. He looked into the fire, wondering if it would be his release. "Sire," the voice came from shadows. Nathaniel did not turn. "I told you not to disturb me tonight, Dorian, and I told you I would not let you face this alone." Dorian stepped into firelight, tall, broad-shouldered, with the bearing of a soldier and eyes that had seen every horror the world could offer. He had served Nathaniel for 200 years. Before that, he had been his enemy. Before that, his brother. Blood did not determine family in the immortal world. Loyalty did. "The physician left an hour ago." Dorian's voice was carefully neutral. "He said you have less than a week." "He is optimistic." Nathaniel's laugh was broken. "I give myself 3 days." "There are options, sire." "Do not." Nathaniel's voice dropped to a whisper that had preceded massacres. "Do not suggest what I know you are about to suggest. Fresh human blood, straight from the vein, it could halt. I will not hunt innocence to save a life that has stretched far beyond its worth." Nathaniel finally turned. His eyes, even dimmed, still held enough power to make lesser creatures kneel. "If this is my end, Dorian, I have earned it 1,000 times over. The blood of Cairnmore alone demands it." Dorian said nothing. They both knew the ledger of Nathaniel's sins ran deeper than any accounting could hold. "The council meets in 3 days." Dorian changed subjects with practiced smoothness. "Victor Kane arrived early. He is staying at the coastal manor." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Victor Kane, the ambitious predator who had been circling for decades, waiting for weakness. The Eastern Territories were his domain, built on trafficking and extortion, and every vice humanity could be manipulated into craving. "Let him come." Nathaniel turned back to the fire. "Let them all come. They will find me standing, or they will find me dust. Either way, they will not find me begging. There is one other matter, the debt. The Ashford debt comes due tonight." Nathaniel closed his eyes. The Ashford debt. $2 million borrowed by a desperate gambler named Aldrich Ashford 6 months ago. He had vanished 3 months later, leaving behind a wife and 2 daughters. Standard practice was simple: liquidate assets. If insufficient, sell the family into servitude until the balance was paid. But something about this debt felt wrong, a sensation like a hand touching the back of his neck in a dark room. "Bring them in, place them in the servant quarters, put the woman to work in the kitchens. The children," he paused, "keep the children out of my sight." "As you wish, sire." Dorian left, swallowed by shadows. Nathaniel remained by the fire, alone with his pain and memories and the growing certainty that these would be his final days. He did not know that 3 floors below, in a battered car pulling up to the service entrance, sat the only 3 people in the world who could save him. He did not know that one of them had already begun to cry, not from fear, from feeling his agony as if it were her own. The service entrance. The car was a 15-year-old Honda Civic with rust eating through the wheel wells. It coughed to a stop in front of the servants' entrance, engine making sounds suggesting imminent mechanical death. Elara Ashford sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel though the car no longer moved. She stared up at the massive structure and thought of prisons, of tombs, of places people entered and never left. "Mommy?" A small voice from the back seat. "Why are you crying?" Elara reached up and touched her cheek. She had not realized she was crying. She wiped tears away and forced something that might pass for a smile. "I am not crying, sweetheart. Just tired." She looked at her daughters in the rearview mirror. "Are you two ready?" Seraphine and Celestia sat side by side, identical except for a small birthmark on Seraphine's left wrist. 6 years old, with wild auburn curls and eyes the color of amethyst. Those eyes unsettled people, always had, but Elara saw only her daughters, her miracles. "Is this where we live now?" Celestia asked, voice small. "For a while, yes." Elara unbuckled her seatbelt. "Remember what we talked about? We are going to work here, and when we have worked long enough, we will be free again." "How long?" Seraphine asked. Elara did not answer. She did not know how to tell a 6-year-old that at minimum wage, paying off $2 million would take 67 years. "Come on." Elara opened her door. "Let us go meet our new employer." Rain had started again. Elara pulled the twins close, trying to shield them as they hurried toward the entrance. A man waited in the doorway, tall, dressed in immaculate black, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. When he looked at Elara, she felt something cold slither down her spine. This was not a man. She knew it instantly, the way prey animals know when predators are near. "Mrs. Ashford." His voice was cultured, British accent softened by centuries in America. "I am Dorian. I manage the household staff. You are expected." "Thank you." Elara's voice came out smaller than intended. She cleared her throat. "These are my daughters, Seraphine and Celestia. The contract states they are permitted to remain with me." Dorian's gaze shifted to the twins. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "They have unusual eyes." Not a question. "A genetic condition." Elara pulled the girls closer. "Violet irises. Rare, but harmless." "I see." Dorian stepped aside. The master is unwell. He is not to be disturbed under any circumstances. You will work in kitchens, laundry, and common areas. The eastern tower is forbidden. The library is forbidden. The third-floor gallery is forbidden. Do you understand? Yes. Your quarters are in the basement, modest but functional. You begin work at 4 in the morning. Meals are provided twice daily. The children are to remain in your quarters or under your direct supervision at all times. They are not to wander. This house has areas dangerous for, he paused, for mortals. The word hung in the air like smoke. Elara nodded. She had known, of course. When Aldrich had first told her about Nathaniel Cross, about the true nature of the man who owned the shell companies and dark money funding legitimate enterprises. She had not believed at first. Vampires belonged in movies, not in the world of credit card debt and overdue bills. But then Aldrich had shown her proof. Documents, photographs, a blood-stained contract dated 1847. And then Aldrich had vanished. Follow me. Dorian led them into the manor. The inside was exactly what Elara expected. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, chandeliers costing more than her childhood home, paintings in gilded frames, portraits of stern-faced people sharing the same cold, predatory gaze. Everything was beautiful. Everything was dead. They descended a narrow staircase into the basement. Temperature dropped with each step. Walls were unfinished stone, weeping condensation. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting weak yellow light that made shadows seem darker by contrast. Dorian opened a door. Your quarters. A room barely large enough for a full bed and small dresser. A tiny bathroom with rust-stained sink. One window high on the wall showing only a narrow strip of gray sky. This would be their home, their cage. Work begins in 7 hours. Mrs. Gable will provide assignments. Do not disappoint her. Do not disappoint the master. He paused in the doorway. And keep the children quiet. The master's condition makes him volatile. Then he was gone. Elara stood in the center of the tiny room, daughters pressed against her sides, feeling the weight of her new reality settle like a burial shroud. "Mommy," Seraphine's voice was barely a whisper. "The big man upstairs, he's hurting very badly." Elara froze. "What?" "We can feel him." Celestia's eyes had gone distant. "He is burning. From the inside. The darkness is eating him." "Stop." Elara knelt, gripping both girls by their shoulders. Her voice was fierce. "Listen to me. You cannot talk about things like that here. Do you understand? You cannot tell anyone about what you feel or see or can do." "But he is dying, Mommy." Seraphine's eyes filled with tears. "He is so scared." "I do not care." Elara hated herself for the words. "Whatever he is feeling is not our concern. We are here to work, to survive. And we survive by being invisible, by being quiet, by never letting anyone know you two are special." The twins looked at each other, having entire conversations without words. Finally, they both nodded. "We promise, Mommy." Elara pulled them into a hug, praying to a God she was not sure she believed in any more that her daughters would be safe in this house of monsters. 3 floors above, Nathaniel Cross doubled over in pain, crushing the chair arm into splinters. And in the basement, Seraphine began to cry, not for herself, for the dying king she had never met. 3 days later, the council arrives. Blackwood Manor had been transformed, the oppressive gloom replaced by cold, calculated elegance. Every surface gleamed, every shadow measured and approved. Dorian had overseen preparations with the precision of a general preparing for war, because that was what this was, war. 12 black limousines wound up the coastal highway, windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb light. Inside each sat a lord of the immortal world, creatures who had walked Earth for centuries, built empires and toppled kingdoms, controlled more wealth than most nations. They were coming to judge Nathaniel Cross, to determine if he was still fit to rule the Pacific territories, or if it was time for new management. In the grand hall, a table was set for 13. 12 seats for the council, 1 for the host. The table was mahogany, 20 feet long, polished to mirror sheen. At each place sat a crystal goblet filled with thick crimson liquid, not blood, synthetic hemoglobin cultivated in laboratories. What civilized vampires drank at diplomatic functions. It was also a lie. Every vampire at this table would have preferred the genuine article. Fresh, warm, taken from living veins. But they played the game of civilization because civilization allowed them to operate in daylight, to own corporations and sit on boards and influence the mortal world in ways open predation never could. Alara stood in the corner, hands clasped in front of her white apron, trying to disappear into wallpaper. Mrs. Gable had pulled her from kitchen duty that morning. One of the regular servers had fallen ill. Alara would replace her. "Keep your head down," Mrs. Gable had hissed, fingers digging into Alara's arm. "Do not look them in the eye. Do not speak unless spoken to. Pour the wine. Step back. Become furniture. These people are not like us. They can smell fear. They can hear your heartbeat across the room. Give them no reason to notice you." Now Alara stood perfectly still, watching as the council filed into the hall. They were beautiful, every single one. Beautiful the way poisonous flowers are beautiful. The way a blade is beautiful just before it cuts. Flawless skin, perfect features, eyes holding depths no human gaze could match, and every single one felt wrong. Her instincts screamed to run, to grab her daughters and flee, consequences be damned. But she had nowhere to run, no money, no family left alive who would shelter a woman with $2 million in debt. So she stood, and waited, and tried not to tremble. The last to enter was Victor Kane. He moved with lazy confidence of a predator who had never known fear. Perhaps 30 in appearance, with white blonde hair falling to his shoulders and eyes the color of fresh blood. He wore a suit of charcoal gray that probably cost more than Alara would earn in 5 years. When he passed her, he paused, turned, looked directly at her, smiled. It was not a kind smile. My, fresh meat in the house of the dying king. How delightfully macabre. Alara did not respond, did not breathe, did not move. Victor chuckled and continued to his seat. The council settled around the table. Conversation rose and fell in languages Alara did not recognize, ancient tongues predating English by millennia. They spoke and laughed and sipped synthetic blood, and Alara understood with perfect clarity that to them she was not even human. She was furniture. She was less than furniture. She was prey they had chosen, for the moment, not to eat. Then the doors at the far end opened, and Nathaniel Cross entered. Alara had never seen him before, had never been allowed on floors where he resided. But she knew him instantly, knew him the way you know the sun, even when not looking directly at it. He was dying. Anyone could see that. His skin had gone the color of old parchment. His eyes, which must have once been striking, had dulled to fog over dirty water. He moved stiffly, as if each step required careful thought and tremendous effort. But he did not show weakness. His spine was straight, shoulders back. He wore a tuxedo of midnight velvet, perfectly tailored, and his face held an expression of bored contempt suggesting he was humoring children rather than facing peers. "Gentlemen, ladies," his voice carried effortlessly, "welcome to Blackwood Manor. I trust your journey was uneventful." Nathaniel, Lord Castellan, an ancient vampire with Mediterranean features, inclined his head a fraction. "You look unwell." "I am touched by your concern, Lorenzo." Nathaniel took his seat with controlled grace. "But as you can see, reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated." "Have they?" Victor Kane's voice dripped false sympathy. "Because from where I sit, you look like a corpse who has not realized he is dead." The table went silent. Nathaniel turned his head slowly, looked directly at Victor, and smiled. It was a terrible smile. "Careful, Victor. Your ambition is showing. It does not suit you. Ambition built my territory. What built yours? Ah, yes, murder and terror, and bodies of innocents stacked so high they blotted out the sun. Victor leaned back. But that was centuries ago, was it not? What have you done lately besides decay? Nathaniel's hands tightened on chair arms. Elara, watching from her corner, saw his knuckles turn white, saw the tremor running through his frame. Would you like a demonstration of what I can do? Nathaniel's voice had dropped to that whisper preceding violence. I would love one. Victor stood, movement smooth and predatory. In fact, I challenge your fitness to rule. Here, now. Stand and walk to me without holding furniture. Strike me with the strength of a king. Prove you are not a hollow shell clinging to power you no longer deserve. Council members exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked hungry. This was what they had come to see, the fall of a king. Nathaniel stood. For a moment he looked formidable, tall, commanding, a creature who had ruled through fear for centuries. Then he took a step. His leg trembled. Another step. His vision tunneled. Edges of the room began to blur, darkness creeping from periphery, pain in his skull, constant background roar, suddenly spiked to a shriek. One more step. His body betrayed him. Nathaniel Cross, the Reaper of the Highlands, collapsed. He went down hard. Knees hit marble with a sound like breaking stone. The crystal goblet in his hand shattered, sending red liquid spraying across pristine white marble. Absolute silence. Then Victor threw his head back and laughed. The king is dead! Long live the king! Dorian was already moving. Sire! But Nathaniel did not hear. The withering had won. His consciousness was fragmenting, reality breaking into shards of pain and darkness, and certain knowledge that this was the end. He had imagined battles, stakes through hearts, sunrise, 1,000 violent endings for a violent life. He had never imagined this, dying on his knees before enemies, weak, helpless, pathetic. If this was divine justice, God had a cruel sense of humor. Elara watched with horror and unwanted pity. This creature, this monster holding her family in bondage, was suffering in a way transcending species. Pain was pain, fear was fear. She took a step back, intending to slip out through the service entrance. Then she heard it, soft padding of small feet. Her heart stopped. No, please, no. Seraphine and Celestia stood in the entrance, still wearing nightgowns, hands clasped together. Their purple eyes were fixed on the fallen figure with an intensity that made Elara's blood run cold. Girls, her voice came out strangled. Run! But they did not run. They walked forward into a room full of monsters, toward a dying king, with the terrible purpose of children who have decided something must be done. He is dying, Celestia said. Her voice was clear, calm. It cut through chaos like a bell. We have to stop the dark, Seraphine answered. And before anyone could move, before Elara could scream, before Dorian could intercept them, the two 6-year-old girls knelt beside the most feared vampire on the continent, and they placed their tiny hands on his cold skin, and the world turned white. The light. The light was not fire, though it burned. Not lightning, though it struck with storm force. It was something older than either. Something predating the division of the world into light and dark, good and evil, predator and prey. It was life itself, pure, undiluted, concentrated into a wave of radiance that exploded from the hands of two 6-year-old girls and washed over the grand hall like a tidal wave. The vampires screamed, not in pain, in shock, in instinctive terror at something their kind had not felt in centuries. Warmth, true warmth, the kind penetrating bone and marrow and reminding them, against their will, of what they had been before the curse, before hunger, before immortality turned them into beautiful corpses animated by stolen blood. Victor Kane staggered backward, hands over his face. Lord Castellan fell from his chair. Lady Morgana, eldest among them at 900 years, dropped to her knees and wept without understanding why. At the center, Nathaniel Cross arched his back, mouth open in silent scream. The withering had been slow death, grinding decay, eating him from inside out, cell by cell, over months of escalating agony. But this was not slow. This was instantaneous, violent, a surgical strike finding every particle of corruption and burning it away. He felt bones knitting, felt gray pallor of skin flush with renewed vitality, felt vision sharpen until he could count dust motes in air, felt hearing expand until he could hear a mouse heartbeat in the walls, waves crashing 3 miles away, Elara Ashford's terrified breathing in the corner. And most of all, he felt the cold emptiness living in his chest for 400 years crack open like frozen lake in spring. Something warm poured in, something dangerously like hope. The light faded as suddenly as it came, leaving the hall plunged back into uncertain candlelight flicker. Silence descended. Absolute, terrified. Nathaniel lay on the floor, staring at the vaulted ceiling, chest heaving with breaths he did not need, but his body demanded anyway. Slowly, carefully, he sat up. The movement was effortless, fluid, powerful. He looked at his hands. Gray tint was gone. His skin had returned to natural alabaster, smooth and unlined. He could feel strength coursing through him like electricity through copper, not just returned, enhanced, as if the withering had been a weight he had carried so long he had forgotten what it felt like to stand upright. He turned his head. Seraphine and Celestia lay slumped on marble beside him, small chests rising and falling in shallow breaths. Their faces were pale, lips slightly blue, and on their arms, visible beneath nightgown sleeves, dark veins stood out like tree roots under snow. No. The word came from Elara. She was already running, server's apron flying. She fell to her knees beside her daughters, gathering them into her arms. No, 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 what did you do? Dorian appeared at Nathaniel's side, offering a hand. Nathaniel took it and rose to full height. He towered over the room, his presence expanding until it filled every corner, pressing against walls like physical force. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power absent for months. What happened? Not a request. A command. Victor Kane, still pressed against the far wall, usual smirk replaced by naked fear, found his voice first. Sorcery. You use human witches to fight your battles. How far the mighty have fallen. Nathaniel turned. The movement was a blur, too fast for human eyes. One moment he stood in the center. The next, his hand was around Victor's throat, lifting him off his feet and slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Not witches. Nathaniel's eyes, no longer dull gray, now burned with deep, swirling indigo flecked with gold. Something else, something I do not yet understand. But if you or anyone else in this room so much as looks at those children with anything other than reverence, I will make Cairnmore look like an act of mercy. He released Victor, who slid down the wall, gasping. Nathaniel turned to face the council. They stared with expressions ranging from awe to terror to barely concealed greed. This meeting is concluded. You will leave my territory, now, and you will carry this message to anyone foolish enough to question my fitness to rule. The King of the Pacific has returned, and he is stronger than ever. No one moved. Now! The word was thunderclap. Windows rattled. Chandeliers swayed. The council left. They did not run, but it was close. Within minutes, the grand hall was empty, except for Nathaniel, Dorian, Elara, and the 2 unconscious girls. Nathaniel knelt beside them. Up close, he could see the price they had paid. Dark veins spreading slowly across skin like ink in water. Breathing labored. Fever flushing cheeks. They are not witches, Dorian said quietly. Are they? No. Nathaniel reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed a curl from Seraphine's forehead. His hand trembled. They are something I have never encountered. They did not simply heal me. They absorbed the corruption, took it into themselves. Why? Elara's voice was raw, broken. Why would they do that? Nathaniel met her eyes. For the first time, he truly looked at her, saw exhaustion etched into her young face. terror. The fierce, burning love of a mother who would tear the world apart to protect her children. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I intend to find out." Dorian summoned Dr. Morrison, the human physician, someone the woman will trust. "The woman has a name." Elara's voice was sharp despite her fear. Elara Ashford. And these are Seraphine and Celestia, not the children, not it. They are human beings. They are my daughters. And whatever debt you think we owe, the debt is void. Elara stopped. "What?" Nathaniel stood. "Your husband's debt. Aldrich Ashford, $2 million. It is void, erased. You are free to leave. I will have Dorian prepare a car. He will drive you anywhere you wish." He paused. "And I will transfer $5 million into an account in your name. Compensation for everything." Elara stared. Her mind could not process the words. Freedom, money, a new life. After months of despair, after resigning herself to decades of servitude, it was too much. "Why?" The question came out barely a whisper. Nathaniel looked down at the two small figures lying unconscious on his floor. "Because they gave me something infinitely more valuable than money. They gave me a reason to live." 3 days later. The royal suite occupied the entire western wing of the 3rd floor, prepared in haste but no expense spared. The bed was large enough to sleep 5 comfortably. Curtains were silk, the color of dawn. A fire crackled in the marble fireplace. And on plush carpet, Seraphine and Celestia played with hand-carved wooden animals Dorian had awkwardly presented the previous morning. They had woken the day after the incident, weak, disoriented, but alive. Dark veins had receded, though faint traces remained like shadows under skin. Dr. Morrison had examined them thoroughly and declared them healthy, if exhausted. He recommended rest, nutrition, and time. When Elara asked about the veins, he went very quiet, then suggested some questions were better left unasked in this house. Now, sitting by the window watching her daughters play, Elara felt like she was living in someone else's life. The door opened without knock. Nathaniel entered, then paused, as if suddenly unsure of himself. "May I come in?" His voice, which had commanded armies and struck terror, sounded almost nervous. Elara stood. "It is your house. It is your room, for as long as you wish to stay." He stepped inside, moving carefully, afraid of breaking something. "How are they?" "Better. Tired, but better." Elara watched him, watching her daughters. There was something in his expression she could not name. Hunger, but not the predatory kind, something softer, more painful. "Good, that is good." He cleared his throat. "I wanted to speak with you about what happens next. I thought we were free to go." "You are." "The money has been transferred. I have had Dorian prepare documentation, trust fund, investments, everything you need to start fresh anywhere in the world." He paused. "But before you decide, I wanted to ask if you would consider staying, not as servants, as guests." Elara blinked. "Why would we do that?" Nathaniel moved to the window, looking out at gray Pacific. When he spoke, his voice was distant. "I am 400 years old. I have killed more people than I can count, built empires and burned them down, tasted every pleasure and vice humanity has conceived, and until 3 nights ago, I had not felt anything in over a century." He turned to face her. "Your daughters gave me back something I thought lost forever. I do not know what to call it. Hope, purpose, the ability to feel something other than hunger and rage, and I—" He hesitated, struggling with words that did not come naturally. "I would like to understand why. I would like to know them, if you will permit it." Before Elara could respond, a small voice interrupted. "Do we have to go?" Both adults turned. Seraphine stood by the bed, clutching her wooden horse. Celestia was right behind her. "Sweetheart, we do not have to do anything." Elara knelt down. "We can leave right now, go anywhere you want, anywhere in the whole world." "But he is lonely." Celestia's purple eyes were solemn. "The big house is too quiet without us." Nathaniel's carefully constructed mask cracked, just for a moment, long enough for Alara to see raw longing beneath. "You should not worry about that," he said, voice rough. "You should think about yourselves, about being children, about playing and laughing and having normal lives." "You are not scary anymore," Seraphine said simply. "Your eyes are blue now, like the ocean." Nathaniel looked at Alara. Alara looked at her daughters, and in that moment she made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "We will stay," she said, "for a while, but not in the basement and not as servants." "Agreed." Relief in Nathaniel's voice was palpable. "Whatever you need, whatever they need, you have only to ask. I need you to tell me the truth, about my husband, about how he really died." Nathaniel's expression hardened. "I did not kill him, if that is what you are asking. Aldrich Ashford's death was ruled suicide. He drove his car off a cliff 3 months ago. Did he kill himself because of the debt? I do not know. By the time I learned of his death, you were already bound by contract." Nathaniel paused. "But I will find out, I promise you that. If there is more to his death than official reports state, I will uncover it." Alara nodded slowly. It was not closure, but it was something. Over following weeks, Blackwood Manor transformed. Nathaniel had the grounds renovated. Oppressive dark drapery replaced with lighter fabrics. Windows sealed for decades were opened, allowing sea air to circulate through ancient halls. And in the garden, despite complete lack of carpentry experience, Nathaniel attempted to build a swing set. It was a disaster. Wood cut unevenly, ropes hung at different lengths. When Dorian tested it, the entire structure collapsed. Seraphine and Celestia found this hilarious. "You are very bad at this," Celestia observed, her 6-year-old bluntness cutting through centuries of pride. Nathaniel, sitting amid wreckage covered in sawdust, looked at giggling girls and felt something he had not felt in 400 years. Joy. "Perhaps Dorian could help," he admitted. "Perhaps Dorian could build the entire thing while you watch and pretend to supervise," Dorian said dryly, already gathering scattered wood. By evening, a proper swing set stood in the garden. Nathaniel pushed the girls gently at first, then higher, as they shrieked with delight. Alara watched from a stone bench, a small smile playing at her lips. This monster, this creature who had held her family hostage. He was trying. And against all logic, against every survival instinct, she was beginning to believe that people, even immortal ones, could change. In the library, late at night, Nathaniel read to them. Fairy tales. The complete lack of irony in a vampire reading about heroes slaying monsters was not lost on anyone, but the girls loved it. They would curl up on either side of him, small bodies relaxed and trusting, while his ancient voice brought stories to life. "And the princess lived happily ever after," he concluded one evening, closing the book. "Did she?" Seraphine asked. "Or did she just stop being scared?" Nathaniel paused. "What do you mean?" "Happily ever after does not mean nothing bad happens. It means you are not scared of bad things anymore, because you have people who love you." The simplicity of the statement hit Nathaniel like a physical blow. This child, barely 6 years old, had articulated something he had spent 4 centuries failing to understand. Happiness was not the absence of darkness, it was the presence of light strong enough to push it back. The confession. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Nathaniel and Dorian stood on the eastern balcony, looking out at the storm gathering over the Pacific. "You care for them." Dorian's voice was carefully neutral. "Is that a problem?" "No, sire. Unexpected, but not a problem." Dorian was silent for a moment. "You have not cared for anyone since—" "Do not!" Nathaniel's voice was sharp. "Do not speak of it." "Perhaps it is time someone did." Dorian turned to face him. "You have carried that grief for 150 years. It has poisoned everything you touch. It created the withering. And if you do not face it now, it will destroy whatever chance you have with this family." Nathaniel's hands tightened on stone railing. "You have no right. I have every right. I was there, Nathaniel. I held you while you screamed her name. I buried her broken body while you razed an entire city to ash. Dorian's voice was gentle but unyielding. She was my niece, your daughter. I loved her too. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared memory. Finally, Nathaniel spoke. His voice was barely audible over wind. Her name was Isabel, I know. She was 7 years old, red hair, like her mother, eyes that changed color in sunlight, brown one moment, green the next. Nathaniel's eyes remained fixed on the horizon. She used to sneak into my study and rearrange my books when I was not looking, alphabetical order, she said, because my system made no sense. She was brilliant, Dorian said softly. She was everything. Nathaniel's voice broke. I had lived for 300 years before she was born, 300 years of blood and darkness. And then, suddenly, there was this tiny creature who looked at me without fear, who climbed into my lap and fell asleep, who made me want to be better than what I was. What happened was not your fault. I made enemies, hundreds of them, thousands. And one found out about her, found out that the Reaper of the Highlands, the monster who felt nothing, actually loved something. Nathaniel's hands were shaking now. They took her during the day while I slept. When I woke, I found the ransom note, but it was not really a ransom. It was revenge. Nathaniel, they had already killed her by the time I arrived, left her body where I would find it, and they waited in shadows to watch me break. A single tear traced down Nathaniel's cheek. I killed every single one of them, 47 men. I made it last 3 days. And when it was done, when I was standing in a room filled with bodies and blood, I realized something. What? It did not bring her back. Nothing I did, no amount of violence, no ocean of blood would ever bring her back. Nathaniel wiped the tear away roughly. So I locked my heart away. I swore I would never care for anyone again, because caring meant pain. And I had already endured more pain than any creature should bear. And now? Dorian asked gently. Nathaniel thought of Seraphine and Celestia, thought of their laughter in the garden, thought of the way they looked at him with those strange purple eyes, not seeing a monster, just seeing someone who needed them. Now I am terrified, he admitted. They are the same age Isabel was. They have the same fearless trust, and every time I look at them, I remember what I lost. I remember that loving someone gives the world a weapon to use against you. That is true. Dorian placed a hand on his shoulder. But it also gives you a reason to wake up, a reason to be better, a reason to fight against darkness instead of surrendering to it. Nathaniel nodded slowly. When I see them, I see Isabel. I see a chance to do better, to be the protector I failed to be for her. Then do not waste it, brother. Do not let fear steal from you what grief could not. They stood together in silence, two immortals bound by blood and loss and fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption was possible, even for monsters. The journal. Elara found it by accident. She was cleaning out the small dresser, organizing the few possessions they had brought, when her hand brushed something wedged beneath the bottom drawer. A notebook, leather-bound, water-stained. She pulled it free and recognized it instantly. Aldrich's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, pages filled with his cramped script, dated entries going back almost 2 years. She started reading. March 15th. Met with representatives from Blackwood Investments today. They offered to consolidate my debts. I should have known better. Nothing in this world is free. But I was desperate. I took the deal. April 3rd. The interest rates are insane. I will never pay this off. Never. I have doomed us all. May 12th. I tried to run. Took Elara and the girls to Seattle. Thought we could disappear. But they found us within a week. The debt would follow. The contract is ironclad. Elara's vision blurred with tears. She had known about the gambling, known about the debts, but seeing it written out, seeing Aldrich's desperation on the page, made it real. She kept reading. June 7th. Something strange happened today. An old man approached me outside the casino, said he was a priest, Orthodox, from the old country. He told me he knew about my debts, knew about Blackwood, and he said he could help. June 8th. Met with the priest again, Father Michael. He told me something impossible. He said my daughters are special, that they carry something in their blood, something ancient. He called them luminary. Said they are descended from a line of healers predating Christianity. I told him he was insane. He showed me proof, photographs, documents, records of births going back centuries, all marked with the same trait: violet eyes, always twins, always female, and always bearing the gift of light. June 10th. Father Michael explained everything: the vampire world, the territories, the lords who control everything from shadows. He said Nathaniel Cross, who holds my debt, is dying from something called the withering, a curse striking immortals who have lost their purpose. And he said only one thing can cure it: the blood and touch of a luminary. Elara dropped the journal. Her hand shook so hard she could barely hold it. This could not be real. It was madness. But the girls had healed Nathaniel. She had seen it. She forced herself to keep reading. June 15th. Father Michael made me an offer. He said if I could get Elara and the girls into Nathaniel's household, if I could ensure they were there when the withering reached its final stage, they would save him. And in return, Nathaniel would protect them, would give them a life I never could. But there is only one way to ensure they end up there, only one way to create a debt large enough that Elara would have no choice but to enter his service. I have to die. Elara's sob echoed in the small room. June 20th. I am going to do it. I am going to borrow $2 million from Nathaniel's operation, enough that Elara and the girls will be bound to his household, and then I am going to stage my death. Make it look like suicide, like the debts drove me to despair. Father Michael has arranged everything: a new identity, a safe house in Canada. I will disappear and Elara will hate me for a while, but she will be safe. The girls will be safe. And when Nathaniel is healed, when he realizes what they have given him, he will protect them with everything he has. This is the only way I can save my family, by making them think I abandoned them. Forgive me, Elara. Forgive me, my beautiful girls. I love you more than life, and that is why I have to do this. The journal ended there. Elara sat on the floor, notebook clutched to her chest, and wept. For her husband, for the sacrifice he had made, for the months she had spent hating him, thinking he had been weak, thinking he had abandoned them. He had loved them so much that he had given up his own life to ensure theirs. A knock at the door made her jump. Elara? Nathaniel's voice, gentle, concerned. I heard. May I enter? She could not speak, could not move. She heard the door open, heard his footsteps approach, felt him kneel beside her. What is wrong? Are the girls? She thrust the journal at him. Read it. Last 10 pages. Nathaniel took the notebook, brow furrowed. She watched his expression change as he read, watched understanding dawn, then shock, then something that looked almost like grief. When he finished, he set the journal down carefully. I did not know, he said quietly. I swear to you, Elara, I did not know any of this. The debt, the contract, it all seemed standard. I never questioned. He is alive. Elara's voice was broken whisper. Aldrich is alive. Somewhere in Canada, living under a new name. And he did all of this, put us through all of this, because some priest told him it was the only way to save us. Father Michael. Nathaniel's eyes had gone distant. I know that name. He was part of an old sect, keepers of ancient knowledge about the vampire world. They were hunted to extinction 2 centuries ago, or so we thought. Was he telling the truth? About the girls? About Luminary? I do not know, but I will find out. Nathaniel stood, offering her his hand. And I will find your husband. If he is alive, if this journal is true, then he deserves to know that his sacrifice worked, that you are safe, that his daughters saved me. Father Michael's letter also contained something else, a genealogy traced back 14 generations. The luminary were not myths. They were real. Healers, protectors, warriors of light who fought against darkness in all its forms. And Seraphine and Celestia are the last of their line, the final legacy of an ancient covenant. Elara looked at her daughters playing in the garden through the window. What does that mean for them? It means they will always be targets, but it also means they will always be extraordinary. Nathaniel's voice was firm. And I will protect them, for as long as I exist. This is my vow. Elara took his hand and let him help her up. She looked into his eyes, those strange indigo eyes flecked with gold, and saw sincerity there. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank him when we find him." Nathaniel paused at the door. "He gave up everything because he believed I would protect you. I intend to prove him right." 1 week later, midnight. The storm came from the Pacific like an invading army. Rain lashed the cliffs. Wind howled through towers. Thunder rolled in waves, each crash closer, as if the heavens were warning of what approached. But Nathaniel did not need warnings. He stood on the eastern balcony, motionless, his enhanced senses reaching into darkness. He could hear helicopters long before human ears would detect them. 4 of them, military grade. Flying low, rotors muffled by technology designed for black operations. Victor was coming. Nathaniel had known this moment would arrive, had felt it building like pressure before an earthquake. Victor Kane was ambitious, ruthless, and now, according to intelligence Dorian had gathered, dying from the same curse that had nearly claimed Nathaniel. A desperate man was more dangerous than 100 calculated ones. Dorian, Nathaniel did not raise his voice. His brother materialized from shadows, already dressed for war. Black tactical gear, silver-edged blade strapped to his back. In his hands, he carried an ornate sword that had tasted blood in more battles than most nations had fought. "The perimeter is secure, sire. I have positioned our people at every entrance. But if Victor has brought the force I suspect, we are outnumbered 5 to 1. Then we will make each of us worth 6. Nathaniel turned from the balcony. "Where are they?" "The library. I sealed it with old wards. Nothing gets through that door without blood permission from you or me." "Good." Nathaniel moved past him, then paused. "If I fall tonight, you know what to do. You will not fall, if I do." Nathaniel's voice was iron. "Get them out. Get Elara and the girls to the safe house in Vancouver. The one under the Ashford name, the real Ashford name, the one her husband is using. Reunite them. Give them the documents, the money, everything they need to disappear." "Nathaniel, promise me, brother, no matter what happens, no matter what I do or sacrifice, you will save them." Dorian's jaw tightened. Then he nodded. "I promise." "Thank you." Nathaniel gripped his shoulder once, a gesture carrying 400 years of brotherhood and trust. "Now let us go remind the young ones why the old kings earned their thrones." They descended as the first explosion rocked the western wing. The library. Elara sat on the floor, back against an ancient bookshelf, arms wrapped around Seraphine and Celestia. The girls were quiet, purple eyes wide, but not afraid. Not yet. They had learned not to be afraid in this house, had learned that the monster who read bedtime stories would never hurt them, that the ancient vampire who pushed them on swings was capable of extraordinary gentleness. But tonight was different. Tonight the gentleness was gone. Tonight they had seen Nathaniel's face transform into something carved from winter and fury. "Is he going to fight?" Celestia whispered. "Yes, sweetheart." "Will he get hurt?" Elara pulled them closer. "I do not know." Another explosion. Closer. The chandeliers swayed. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Mommy?" Seraphine's voice was very small. "We can feel them. The angry men. There are so many." "I know, baby." "We can feel him too. The man leading them. He is hurting inside. Like Nathaniel was. The darkness is eating him." Elara froze. "What?" "He is scared, Mommy. He does not want to die." Celestia's eyes were distant. "He thinks we can save him, like we saved Nathaniel." Before Elara could respond, Gunfire erupted from above. Not normal gunfire. The reports were wrong, echo distorted. Silver rounds. Ultraviolet ammunition. Weapons designed specifically to kill vampires. Victor had come prepared for war. The battle. The western corridor had become a killing ground. Nathaniel moved through smoke and chaos like a ghost, like death given form and purpose. He was not fighting with the casual brutality of his youth. This was different. This was surgical. Every movement economical. Every strike designed not to kill immediately, but to disable, to send a message. I am not the monster you remember. I am something worse. I am a monster with something to protect. 3 mercenaries rounded the corner, weapons raised. Nathaniel was already behind them. He broke the first man's knee with a casual kick, disarmed the second with a movement too fast to see. The third got a shot off. The ultraviolet round grazed Nathaniel's shoulder, burning through fabric and skin. He did not even flinch. His hand closed around the man's throat. "Leave now or die here. Choose quickly." The mercenary dropped his weapon and ran. Nathaniel let him go. These men were hired guns, paid to do a job they did not understand. Killing them would be easy, meaningless. The real threat was Victor. "Sire," Dorian's voice echoed down the corridor. "Eastern Tower. Victor has bypassed the main defenses. He is—" An explosion cut him off. Not the Eastern Tower, the Western Tower, where the library was located. Nathaniel's blood turned to ice. "No," he ran. Not the measured pace of a predator stalking prey. This was pure, desperate speed. The kind that blurred reality. The kind that bent physics through sheer will. He reached the library door to find it blown inward, ancient oak reduced to splinters. The wards had held against magic, but Victor had used modern explosives. Crude, effective. Inside, the scene froze Nathaniel's immortal heart. Victor Kane stood in the center, one arm wrapped around Celestia's small body, a gun pressed to her temple. The child was silent, purple eyes locked on her mother. Elara was on the floor, blood running from a cut on her forehead where she had been backhanded. Seraphine knelt beside her, small hands pressed against the wound, trying to heal. "Nathaniel," Victor's voice was strained, desperate. "I knew you would come." Nathaniel stepped through the shattered doorway. Behind him, Dorian and what remained of their forces appeared, weapons raised, but they could not shoot, could not risk the child. "Let her go, Victor." "I cannot." Victor's hand trembled. The gun shook against Celestia's head. "Look at me. Look at my skin. I have weeks left, maybe days. The withering does not care about pride or territory or power. It only cares about ending us." "I know." Nathaniel took another step forward. "I lived through it. I know the fear, the pain, the certainty that you are dying alone, unmourned, unloved. Then you understand why I need them, why I need her." Victor's eyes were wild. "One child, just give me one child. You have 2. Surely that is fair trade for peace between our territories." "They are not objects to be traded." "Everything is an object to be traded. That is the first law of our world. Everything has a price. Everyone can be bought." Victor pressed the gun harder against Celestia's temple. The child whimpered. "Name yours. Money? Territory? I will give you the entire eastern seaboard. Just give me this one small girl, and let me live." Nathaniel looked at Celestia, looked at the fear in her eyes, the trust. Even now, even with a gun to her head, she was looking at him, waiting for him to fix this, to save her. The way he had failed to save Isabel. For 150 years, that memory had defined him, the moment he arrived too late. The moment he found his daughter's body and realized all his power, all his immortality, all his accumulated strength meant nothing in the face of loss. He had sworn never to feel that helpless again, had sworn never to care enough to be broken. But these children had made him break that vow, had wormed past defenses built over centuries, had made him remember what it felt like to be human, to hope, to love. And now that love was being used against him, just as it had been with Isabel. The universe, it seemed, enjoyed its cruel patterns. Nathaniel looked at Victor, saw the desperation, the fear. Saw himself from 3 weeks ago, dying and terrified and grasping at anything that might offer salvation. He understood. And understanding made what he had to do even harder. "No," Nathaniel said quietly. Victor blinked. "What?" "I said no. You cannot have her. You cannot have either of them." Nathaniel took another step forward. "But I will give you something else." "There is nothing else I want." "There is." Nathaniel slowly, deliberately, lowered himself to his knees. The king of the Pacific, the reaper of the highlands, the creature who had burned villages and toppled kingdoms, knelt on the floor of his own library like a supplicant before a god. The room went absolutely silent. "Take my life instead," Nathaniel said. His voice was steady, calm, the voice of a man who had made peace with his decision. "I have lived for 400 years. I have taken thousands of lives. I have committed sins that would fill volumes. But these children, they have done nothing but offer kindness to a dying monster. They have decades of life ahead of them, joy and love and all the things we have forgotten how to feel." "Nathaniel, no." Dorian's voice was broken. "Do not do this." "Let her go, Victor. Put down the gun, and I will kneel here while you do whatever you need to do. My blood, my life. Take it, and let them leave." Victor stared at him. His mind could not process what he was seeing. Nathaniel Cross did not kneel, did not beg, did not surrender. This was impossible. "You would die for them?" Victor's voice was barely a whisper. "For 2 human children you have known less than a month? I would?" Nathaniel's eyes were bright, not with unshed tears, vampires could not cry, but with something that looked remarkably like peace. "Because for the first time in 150 years, I have something worth dying for, and I will not fail them the way I failed my daughter." Ilara gasped. Seraphine and Celestia stared at the kneeling vampire with understanding far beyond their years. "Please," Nathaniel said. The word was foreign in his mouth. When had he last said it? 2 centuries ago? 3? "Let her go. I am begging you. One king to another. Let her go, and I will give you everything." Victor's hand shook. The gun wavered. He looked down at Celestia, at her small face, at tears streaming down her cheeks, and something in him broke. He saw himself, saw what he had become. A creature so consumed by fear of death that he was willing to threaten a child, to murder innocence, to buy himself a few more years of empty existence. When had he become this? The gun lowered, slowly, fractionally. Victor's voice cracked. "I do not want to die." "I know," Nathaniel said gently. "Neither did I. But these children taught me something. Death is not the enemy. A life without meaning is." Victor released Celestia. The child ran to her mother, sobbing. Ilara gathered both girls into her arms, her own tears falling freely. Victor dropped the gun, fell to his own knees, facing Nathaniel. "What have I become?" Before Nathaniel could answer, small footsteps approached. Seraphine and Celestia walked forward, hand in hand. They moved past their mother, past Dorian and his drawn weapons, past all the fear and violence filling the room. They walked to Victor Kane, and they knelt beside him. "Do not!" Nathaniel's voice was sharp with panic. "Girls, get back. He is dangerous. He is hurting," Seraphine said simply. "Like you were." "We can fix it," Celestia added. "No," Ilara screamed. "No, you are too young. Last time it almost killed you. You cannot—" But they had already placed their hands on Victor's shoulders. The light was different this time. Softer. Gentler. Not the blinding explosion that had healed Nathaniel, but a warm, golden glow that spread like sunrise. It wrapped around Victor Kane, seeping into his skin, his bones, his withered, terrified soul. Victor gasped, not in pain, in wonder. He felt the withering retreat, felt darkness that had been eating him from inside dissolve like morning mist. But it was more than physical healing. The light touched something deeper. It found every cruel thing he had done, every life he had destroyed, every moment of casual violence and calculated evil, and it did not judge. It simply showed him. Began to cry. "I am sorry," he sobbed. Began to cry. "I am sorry," he sobbed. The words poured out like poison from a wound. "I am so sorry. For all of it, for everything. I have lived 800 years, and I have never once chosen kindness over cruelty. Never once chosen mercy over power." The girls did not speak. They simply held him while the light did its work. When they finally released him and stepped back, Victor looked different. His skin had returned to natural, pale vitality. His eyes were clear, but more than that, something in his posture had changed. The predatory arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. He looked at the two small girls who had saved him. "Why?" "Because everybody deserves a chance," Seraphine said. "Even monsters," Celestia finished. Victor laughed. It was a broken, wondering sound. "Even monsters." He looked at Nathaniel, still kneeling. "You were willing to die for them." "I was? I am? I have lived for 8 centuries. I have ruled territories and commanded armies and crushed anyone who stood in my way. And not once has anyone ever been willing to die for me." Victor stood slowly, offering his hand to Nathaniel. "What does that say about the lives we have lived?" Nathaniel took the offered hand and rose. "That perhaps it is time we live differently." Victor nodded. He turned to his remaining mercenaries standing in the doorway, confused and terrified. "Stand down, all of you. The operation is over. We leave, now." "Sir, the contract—" "I said now." Victor's voice held command of centuries. The mercenaries fled. He turned back to Nathaniel. "I will leave your territory. I will not trouble you or this family again. And I will spend whatever time I have left trying to undo even a fraction of the harm I have caused." He looked at Seraphine and Celestia. "Thank you. I do not deserve your mercy, but I will try to earn it." The girls said nothing, simply watched with their ancient, knowing eyes. Victor walked to the shattered doorway, paused, looked back. "Nathaniel, you asked what we have become. I think I know the answer now. We have become exactly what we were always meant to be, a warning, a reminder that power without love is just another form of death." Then he was gone. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. Silence filled the library. Nathaniel stood motionless, processing what had just happened. He had been prepared to die, had made peace with it, and instead he had witnessed something impossible, a redemption he had not thought possible for creatures like them. "Are they?" Elara's voice was shaking. She was still on the floor, still holding her daughters. "Are they okay?" Nathaniel knelt beside them. Up close he could see the toll the healing had taken. Both girls were pale. Dark veins showed faintly under skin, but their eyes were bright, alert. "We are okay, Mommy," Seraphine said. "It did not hurt this time." "We are getting stronger," Celestia explained, "learning how to help without taking so much into ourselves." Nathaniel looked at these two small miracles and felt something shift in his chest. The place where his heart had once beaten, the place frozen for 150 years. It was thawing. "You saved him," he said quietly. "You saved us all." "We saved you," Seraphine corrected. "Mr. Victor saved himself. We just showed him the way." Nathaniel laughed. It was a real laugh, warm, genuine. "When did you become so wise?" "We were always wise," Celestia said seriously. "You just were not listening." Elara pulled Nathaniel into the embrace. He stiffened at first, unused to physical affection, then slowly, carefully, wrapped his arms around all three of them. They sat there amid the wreckage, this strange, impossible family, while the storm outside began to quiet, and first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky. 2 weeks later, Vancouver, Canada. The coffee shop was small, unremarkable, the kind of place where people came to disappear into laptops and their own thoughts. Nathaniel sat by the window, watching rain streak down glass, waiting. He did not have to wait long. The man who entered was thin, haunted. He wore a cheap jacket and had grown a beard to disguise his features. But Nathaniel recognized him instantly. The scent, the heartbeat, the particular way he carried his shoulders. Aldrich Ashford. The man froze when he saw Nathaniel. For a moment, pure terror flashed across his face. Then he straightened his spine and walked to the table. "Mr. Cross?" His voice was hoarse. "I did not expect—" "Sit." "Not a request." Aldrich sat. His hands shook as he placed them on the table. "Are they safe?" The question burst from him. "Alara and the girls, are they—" "They are safe. They are well. They are—" Nathaniel paused, searching for the right word. "They are happy." Aldrich's shoulders sagged with relief. Tears filled his eyes. "Thank God." "You sacrificed everything for them." Nathaniel's voice was quiet. "Your life, your identity, your family, all based on the word of a priest you barely knew. Father Mickle showed me proof, documents, prophecies. I had no choice." "You had a choice. You could have run, could have taken them far away and hoped for the best." Nathaniel leaned forward. "Instead, you orchestrated your own death, condemned your wife to servitude, put your daughters in the house of a monster. That took courage, or madness. I have not decided which. Both, probably." Aldrich wiped his eyes. "Are you here to kill me, for the deception?" "No." Nathaniel slid an envelope across the table. "I am here to give you a choice." Aldrich opened it. Inside was a passport, Canadian citizenship under his new name, and a bank statement showing $10 million. "What is this?" "Your reward for trusting me with the most precious things in your life." Nathaniel stood. "You can use that money to build a new life here. Or you can come home. Alara knows the truth. She has forgiven you. The girls ask about their father sometimes. Aldrich stared at the documents. "I do not deserve forgiveness. None of us do. But we receive it anyway. That is the miracle." Nathaniel moved toward the door, paused. "You have 1 week to decide. After that, the offer expires. Choose carefully, Aldrich Ashford. Some chances only come once." He left the broken man sitting in the coffee shop, staring at a future he thought he had lost forever. 3 days later, Dorian picked up Aldrich from Vancouver Airport. The reunion happened in the garden. Alara saw him first. She did not run, did not cry. She simply walked to him, looked him in the eyes, and slapped him hard across the face. Then she pulled him into an embrace. "You stupid, brave, idiotic man," she whispered. The girls did not remember him well, but they felt the rightness of his presence, felt the way their mother's heart settled. And that was enough. That night, 5 people sat around the dinner table at Blackwood Manor. A family stitched together from impossible circumstances, broken people learning to be whole. And for the first time in his 400 years, Nathaniel understood what home truly meant. The garden at Blackwood Manor had never looked more alive. What had once been a carefully manicured showpiece had been transformed into something wilder, more joyful. Flowers bloomed in riot colors. A vegetable patch occupied what had been a formal rose garden, and in the center the swing set stood, ropes finally hanging at correct lengths. Nathaniel pushed Seraphine and Celestia gently, their laughter rising into clear autumn air. They were 7 now, growing with the terrifying speed mortal children possessed. Already they were different from the frightened, exhausted girls who had first arrived. They were confident, bright, happy. They were healing him just by existing. Alara sat on the stone bench, knitting needles clicking in steady rhythm. She was making a scarf, something warm for approaching winter. She looked different, too. Dark circles under her eyes had faded. Constant tension in her shoulders had eased. She smiled more. Aldrich was teaching Dorian how to prune roses. The 2 men engaged in earnest discussion about proper cutting angles. It was surreal, beautiful. A vampire and a once-dead gambler bonding over horticulture. "Higher," Celestia shrieked with delight. "If I push you any higher, you will achieve orbit," Nathaniel said, but he pushed them higher anyway. Eventually, he helped the girls down. They immediately ran to Alara, chattering about something they had seen. A bird's nest, a particularly interesting beetle. The kinds of observations children made when they felt safe enough to pay attention to the world. Nathaniel walked over and sat beside Alara, close enough that their shoulders touched. Not quite holding hands, but not quite separate either. They had not rushed into anything, had not forced a relationship neither was ready for. But slowly, carefully, something had grown between them. Understanding, respect, the beginning of something that might someday be called love. "I went to see the grave yesterday," Nathaniel said quietly. Ilara knew which grave. He had told her the story weeks ago. Isabel, the daughter he had lost, the wound that had never healed. "How was it?" "I brought flowers. Seraphine and Celestia helped me pick them. Wildflowers, the kind Isabel used to gather." Nathaniel's voice was soft. "I talked to her, told her about the girls, about you, about Aldrich, about how I have been given a second chance I do not deserve, but will not waste." "What did she say?" Nathaniel looked at Ilara in surprise. "It is a grave. The dead do not speak. The dead speak to those who listen." Nathaniel considered this. I think she would have liked them. Seraphine and Celestia, they have her fearlessness, her joy, her ability to see good in things others have given up on, including you, especially me. Nathaniel turned to watch the girls. "I cannot bring her back, cannot undo what happened, but I can honor her memory by being better, by protecting these children the way I failed to protect her." Ilara reached out and took his hand. The gesture was simple, natural. He laced his fingers through hers and felt, for the first time in 150 years, at peace. "Uncle Nathaniel," Seraphine called out. She had started calling him that a month ago. He had not corrected her. "Come see, the roses bloomed." "I am coming." He squeezed Ilara's hand once and stood. Duty calls. He walked over to where the girls knelt by rose bushes, exclaiming over late-season flowers. He knelt beside them, listening to their observations, answering their questions, and thought about the strange path that had led him here. 400 years of darkness, of blood and rage and empty victories. And then 2 small girls with purple eyes had placed their hands on his chest and filled the void with light. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The autumn air carried the smell of ocean and growing things. And in the garden of Blackwood Manor, a family that should not exist laughed together as the day faded into comfortable night. The shelter was in a rundown part of Detroit, the kind of neighborhood most avoided after dark. But Victor Kane walked its streets without fear, not because he was a vampire, not because he was powerful, but because he had learned slowly and painfully that fear was a choice, and he was choosing differently now. He pushed open the door to Lighthouse Shelter. The smell of cooking soup filled the air. Children's laughter echoed from back rooms. And at the front desk, a tired-looking woman looked up in surprise. "Can I help you?" "I am here about the donation." Victor pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $2 million. Anonymous, for operational costs, expansion, whatever you need. The woman stared at the check, at the zeros. Her hands trembled. This is real?" "It is real. There will be more, every month, for as long as you operate." Victor smiled. It was still not a natural expression, but he was learning. "I have done terrible things in my life. I am trying to do better. This is a start." "Thank you." The woman was crying now. "You have no idea what this means. The children we can help, the families." "I know." Victor thought of 2 small girls with purple eyes, of the light that had shown him what he had become and what he could be. Use it well. He turned to leave, paused at the door. "One question. Do you believe people can change? Really change, I mean, no matter what they have done?" The woman thought for a moment. "I have seen addicts get sober, seen abusers learn to be gentle, seen broken people put themselves back together piece by piece." She smiled. "So yes, I believe anyone can change, as long as they are willing to do the work." Victor nodded. "Then I suppose I had better get to work." He walked out into Detroit night, alone but no longer lonely, dying but no longer dead, a monster learning slowly and painfully how to be human again. Behind him, the shelter's lights blazed warm against darkness. Ahead, an uncertain path stretched toward an unknown future, but for the first time in 800 years, Victor Kane walked it without fear, because two children had shown him that redemption was not earned through grand gestures or final victories. It was built in small moments, one kind act at a time, one choice at a time, one life saved at a time. The darkness would always be there. That was the nature of the world, but so would the light. And he had finally learned which one to follow. Nathaniel stood in the doorway of the girls' bedroom, watching them sleep. Seraphine clutched her wooden horse. Celestia had her arms around a stuffed bear Dorian had given her. They looked so small, so vulnerable, so impossibly precious. Elara appeared beside him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against evening chill. "They are safe," she whispered. "For now." Nathaniel's voice was quiet. "But the world is dangerous. There are others like Victor, others who will see what they can do and want to use them. Then we protect them. Together, all of us." She gestured to include Aldrich, asleep in the guest room, exhausted from a day of gardening with Dorian. Nathaniel looked at her, at this woman who had every reason to hate him but had chosen understanding instead, who had raised miracles in the midst of slavery and taught them kindness when the world offered only cruelty. "I love them," he said. The words were difficult, foreign, but true. "I did not think I could love anyone again, but I love them, and I love you." Elara's smile was soft, warm. "I know, Nathaniel. I have known for weeks, and I love you too. All of you, the monster you were, the man you are becoming, the father you have chosen to be." She kissed him gently, then walked toward her own room, leaving him standing guard in the doorway. Nathaniel remained there for a long time, watching over the children who had saved him, thinking about second chances and redemption, and the strange, terrifying, beautiful possibility that maybe, just maybe, even monsters could learn to love. "Thank you," he whispered to the sleeping girls, "for seeing something worth saving in a creature like me." In her sleep, Seraphine smiled, and in the garden below, the roses bloomed under autumn moonlight, filling the night air with the scent of new beginnings.